Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Global Trade Show. I'm your host, Lawrence Christopoulos. Today, we've got an exciting episode all about aluminium here in Australia and around the globe. And to join me, I've got the absolute pleasure of having Marghanita Johnson, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Australian Aluminium Council. Marghanita, lovely to meet you. How are you?
Well, thank you. Good to be here.
So, can we tell the viewers and the audience about, let's talk about the council and then maybe expand it into the industry?
So I think the Australian Aluminium Council, we represent Australia's vertically integrated aluminium supply chain. So bauxite, which is the raw ore, alumina, which is the intermediate product, which is most people when you say alumina, think you're just saying aluminium wrong. No, alumina is an independently traded commodity. Aluminium, the finished good product that we produce here in Australia, and then we also represent the manufacturers from mine to market. And what we really look to do is to help create the conditions that create a sustainable and vibrant opportunities for Australia's domestic manufacturing from mine to market as part of our global supply chain.
Wonderful. Well, it is such an important industry because it feeds into so many other categories right across our economy globally as well. So, how do you see Australia's aluminium position in a global sense?
So, one thing people don't realize is exactly how big the industry is. So, in terms of we go back and we think about why is the aluminium industry here in Australia, there's two reasons. One, so we have some of the world's largest resources and reserves of bauxite. See, we are the world's second largest producer of bauxite. We produce nearly a quarter of the world's bauxite, some of which we value add to domestically and some of which we export every year. We're the world's second largest producer of alumina. We've got 5 alumina refineries around the country. And we also have the world's seventh largest producer of aluminium, and we have 4 aluminium smelters. So we have, including the downstream manufacturing, operations in every state and territory except the ACT. So going back to your question, how big are we and why are we here? The other reason we're here is that we've got the world's reserves of bauxite. We also have energy. So in order to make alumina and then to make aluminium again, you need to add a lot of energy into that supply chain. So those two things means that aluminium is one of 2 products that goes from mine to market here in Australia. Only 2 things do that, aluminium and steel. But also Australia is one of the very few places that has that mine to market value chain. We export all the way along. We export bauxite, we export alumina, and we export aluminium, but we do actually do the mine to market here as well.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that so many of our viewers, I suppose, we take for granted the
Yeah.
amount of um, industries that aluminium feeds. Yeah, so some of those, could you explain
So
those?
aluminium is used pretty much in everything, almost to the point where you're probably touching aluminium half the time.
Yeah.
Your iPhone, most smartphones are made of aluminium, and a lot of that aluminium is actually derived from bauxite that is mined right here in Australia. It tends to be Australian aluminium that goes into the iPhones. But it's used a lot. The big sectors are construction,
Mm.
so windows and doors, but also in cabling and wires. It's used in transport. Aluminium is lightweight but also very strong. And that's not just your cars, that's also trucks, trains, planes. So, literally, the trains, planes, and automobiles all contain aluminium. It's also used very much in the energy sector. So, one of the real growth sectors that we have at the moment is in energy. So, it's used in poles and wires, but it's also used in solar panels, it's used in wind turbines. So, it really is used in such a wide range of things. And we see its use being very highly correlated with growth in GDP. So
Mm.
as countries urbanise, they tend to use more aluminium per capita. And for that reason, global demand for aluminium is expected to pretty much double between now and 2050.
Wonderful. Well, that's a perfect segue for my next question. What are some of the opportunities on a global scale for Australia when it comes to this sector?
So I think Australia really is like many other sectors, the aluminium sector. We're at a bit of a crossroads in this industry. We've got the bauxite, and historically we had access to internationally competitive energy in Australia. Australia is undergoing the energy transition at the moment, but so are a lot of other countries around the world where we look at it and our fossil fuel fleet is aging and is gradually being replaced. It's being replaced by a range of different technologies. That is making energy more challenging at the moment, and it is a difficult sort of 10 to 15 years that we're in. But as we move through that and we get it right, what we actually see is aluminium is a very large electricity user. So we use around 12 to 15% of Australia's East Coast electricity,
Wow, it's huge.
a huge amount of electricity. And that used to be kind of seen as maybe that's a problem. That's actually a huge opportunity. So we actually create baseload demand in the grid that actually helps stabilize the grid. And actually we have some demand response options. So when the grid's under stress, we can do that. So we actually, not only are we a big energy user, we're actually facilitating the energy transition. And also aluminium's used in solar panels and wind turbines. So it becomes almost cyclical in terms of these things. So as Australia gets the energy transition moves through the energy transition and we again restore internationally competitive energy to Australia's industry. And that's not just us, but I am a firm believer that if you get it right for aluminium, we actually start to get it right for everybody.
Yeah.
We get it right for us, then actually we have that opportunity. We've got that bauxite in the ground. Basically, we take bauxite and we add energy to it. We turn it into alumina, we add more energy, and we turn it into aluminium. So really the world's our oyster in terms of what we can do in the primary supply chain of aluminium.
Wonderful. Well, yeah, I love the passion you've got as well, Marghanita. I think, as we talked about, so many people take it for granted, but you can see how passionate and invested you are to make sure this industry continues to grow and succeed. What are some of the recent challenges that you and your members have been facing?
So certainly, the challenges are, as I said, around energy, and some of that's in the well publicised. I
Yeah.
think when you are such a big end user, but as I said, I think we're turning around now and looking at that as an opportunity. We are now underpinning some of the transition in certain regions, particularly regions like Gladstone. I think some of the other challenges are because we are a vertically integrated industry, because we have got all of those different parts. In some ways, that's a huge opportunity. Equally, that makes a challenge because if it's a bit like a house of cards. If one thing doesn't work,
Yeah.
then the whole thing can, become pretty unstable. Hopefully not fall over, but become pretty unstable. So what we actually have realized probably in the last 5 years is we really need everything to work to make that work. So we need to be able to have the environmental approvals to mine the bauxite. We need industry policy, we need energy policy, but also importantly, we need trade policy. So I think particularly in terms of potentially some of your viewers,
Mm.
um, we are really seen as a reliable and stable supplier of choice to many of our global trading partners. So about 40% of our bauxite is exported, about 85% of our alumina and 90% of our aluminium, even though some of it is still used domestically all the way. We are a key supplier to all the different regions around the world that need those different products. And we're seen as a really stable and reliable part. And I think at the moment, when we look at a very challenging set of geopolitical situations, having a stable and reliable trading partner has never been more important.
Absolutely. I think that, this is, as Australia, one of our strong points of difference is that stability, is that trust that people know that they're going to get the quality, they're going to get the financial sector stable. There's always they can count on us, which is really important in such an important industry as aluminium as well.
Yeah, I think also picking up on that, what we've seen is, during the COVID-19 pandemic, it was the fact that we could make mine to market aluminium here in Australia all the way through. We were supplying the construction industry. We were supplying parts to transport, to truck parts,
Yeah,
bus parts,
yeah,
those sort of things that could not be imported at the time. And I think we really need to value that sovereign capability.
yeah.
And again, at the moment, given current, geopolitical uncertainties, again, the ability to take what is largely we do import and export various parts, but basically the fundamental backbone of the industry is that domestic supply chain, and having that does give us a huge strategic advantage. I think of it as a national asset, and I think it's one that we really need to be proud of and support.
Yeah, well, beautifully said, because you're right. That sovereign capability, aluminium, especially in our supply chain audience type sector as well, they rely on it for everything, whether it's warehouse sort of infrastructure, you've got, as you said, the vehicles, the transport, the trucks, packaging, so many things, aerospace, all the type of transport, every point of transport, I'm sure aluminium touches in some form or fashion.
Exactly. And I think we are, as I said, most of our, for example, our primary aluminium tends to get exported to our trading partners in Southeast Asia, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Thailand, those sort of countries. And it's those partner countries that we have those great relationship with in terms of what we supply to them, what they supply back, those really trusted trading relationships.
Great. Can I ask about sort of market diversification? I think that, you touched on some of those geopolitical risks. There's always, I think, increasingly now in the last few years, companies here in Australia have decided that they need to diversify some of their markets. Is that something that you and the council are looking at?
Look, I think if I think about it, in some ways, is it a conscious choice versus so alumina and aluminium are globally traded commodities. So they're traded on the London Metals Exchange or traded at least at that parity pricing of the London Metals Exchange pricing. We actually run a really interesting set of analysis that we do every year where we look at where all our different products go year to year. So across bauxite, alumina, and aluminium. And it changes every year.
Oh,
So
okay.
unlike some commodities, and it's different from bauxite to alumina and alumina to aluminium, depending on the needs of those trading partners. So we do supply most of our bauxite. Most of our bauxite goes to China. What we saw in 2025 was an increased percentage, around 10%, was actually going to the Gulf region for the first time. Now that's going to be different again in 2026. Similarly, alumina, historically where we used to supply that, changed a lot following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We used to export a lot to Russia.
Yeah.
That supply moved into the Gulf a lot more in recent years. Obviously, that will change again this year again.
Yeah.
And aluminium, some years we've supplied a lot to the US, some years we haven't. So what I would say is we operate much more under market dynamics rather than companies may have a strategy around who they're supplying and their key markets. But as an industry, what we see is forces within that industry do change year on year.
Yeah, great. Well, it's something I suppose, I hadn't really thought about, and I'm sure many of the viewers, that again, we sort of take for granted how those market shifts have direct impact on this sector.
Yes. No, and as I said, it is even as somebody who works every day in the industry, it's still fascinating when we get that snapshot of annual data. It's available on our website if anyone wants to
Yeah,
have a
well, let's
look.
please tell the viewers about the website.
So on our website, if you go to aluminium.org.au,
Yeah.
under our resources page, you'll find a whole series of fact sheets. Feel free to go in there, have a browse, have a look at where some of our bauxite, alumina, and aluminium go. Who are our key competitors, as I said, and it is worth looking year on year because it does change quite dramatically year on year. And 2026 we know will be different to 2025. How exactly different, we don't know yet, but we'll watch this space.
Well, your industry, it's going from strength to strength. It's becoming more and more important year on year. So it's really so critical for all of us across global trade and supply chain to keep abreast of that. Can you tell us about what you brought in here as well? There's the little samples.
The little samples, and I don't know how well this is going to be able to be seen on TV, but so look, this is bauxite. This bauxite, if I give it a shake, you can probably see that is literally how it comes out of the ground. It's little Pisa lights. And bauxite is the name of aluminium ore. So unlike iron ore or things that are named, bauxite is actually
Totally different name.
totally different name.
Okay.
It's a long history there,
Yeah.
which is actually a mixture of different geology. So it's actually not just one geology, but it's aluminium ore. So that would be about 30 to 50% aluminium at that point, or aluminium oxide. This is alumina, so a white powder.
Yep.
And it does look like a pure white powder. And that is the first big step in value adding. And as I said, that is an independently traded commodity. And we do export a lot of that. And that is aluminium, pure aluminium oxide.
Right.
So Al2O3 for any of the chemists out there. And then in here is a little piece of aluminium, which has been not only smelted, so produced by one of our smelters, but one of our extruders cut it into a little shape for us so that we could fit it into the packaging. So that is primary aluminium. A lot of people know about aluminium.
Yeah.
Some people know bauxite. Most people don't know alumina in the middle. But that in itself is the first really big value-adding step that supplies jobs and value to our economy.
Correct. Well, it's been fascinating, Marghanita. Thank you so much. I know how busy you are and how in demand the members and your resources of the council are because of all the great opportunities. across the sector. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me on the Global Trade Show. Is there anything coming up in 2026 you'd like to tell the audience about? Any initiatives or events?
I'd just say watch this space. Look,
Yeah,
feel free to follow us on LinkedIn. Or have a look at our website. That's where we really post most of our things. This industry, I've worked in it for nearly 30 years. Never say never. There's always something new.
great. Well, fantastic way to wrap up this interview. Thank you so much. Congratulations on the work that you and your team do and the industry itself. So thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man.